And the countdown begins.
On with the countdown.
Yeah. I was thinking of doing the numbers thing like you wanted, Mace, but do it with like numbers that guys didn't wear for very long, right? You will remember Philip Lindsay's first number with the Denver Broncos. You will remember C.J. Anderson's first number with the Denver Broncos. There's a lot of people
I
that may
do.
not.
Yeah, Philip Lindsay, I believe, was number 2 when he first got to Denver, and C.J. Anderson was number 9, right?
And 39.
Yeah, 39, way back. Like, he was 9 in college. But it's interesting to think these are players that are relatively recent in Broncos canon, and if they played today, they would have different numbers than the ones that they actually wore. I don't think C.J. Anderson would have been number 22. And Philip Lindsay, I think, definitely would have played out his career at number 2, which would have meant he would have had number 2 and then immediately would have been handed off to Pat Surtain in 2021. Funny how that works.
Yes, funny how the NFL works. It is Orange and Blue today. We're presented by Sean Ponda, Cecil, Lammey, and Andrew Mason talking about a Broncos win. But Mace, can I get something off my chest, my friend?
Sure.
I don't like when people complain about a win. Like, a win is a win is a win. Now we're going to go through the whys and everything and Javonte injury. Like, we've got a ton to get to on today's show. But first and foremost, Broncos country, man, all I want is a win. And then you get a win. It's like, well, it was the Bears. It was a win. Okay, it was ugly. But in the W column, I do not think style points are assessed.
Well, I think you should be happy about any win, but as it fades, as you get to the 24-hour rule, right, and then you move on, I think that's when you focus on the bigger picture stuff. Although, I mean, it was interesting that Sean Payton was already focused on the bigger picture stuff right after the game. And I think he set that tone. And honestly, I'm kind of with him on this, actually. And yes, you never, you don't throw back a fish when you catch it, if it's, if it's a certain size. And you don't throw back any win when you reel it in. But look, here's the thing. You have to be critical about it if you're going to actually get better from it. And if you just look and say, oh, it's a win, everything is fine, then you're not coming closer to solving the issues. And I'm not sure the Broncos solved many issues. I think they took a step forward in some ways, but there are a lot of issues on this team that are as strong today as they were before Sunday's game took place.
I believe it was Adam Troutman last week in the locker room when we talked to him, Mason. He was very forward about the embarrassing loss to Miami, but he said one is a trend. So, yeah, you got one. Now you're looking for 2. You've got the Jets. We'll preview that. That's a much tougher game than people are thinking. But, like, this is the way you can build positive momentum. And we definitely saw some good plays from young players in combination. I think how the Orange and Blue Today combo, Cecil, Lammey, Andrew Mason, that was combo, right? It's chocolate and peanut butter, whatever you want to say. Like, I think there's a combination up front with Nick Bonito and Jonathan Cooper that we need to really break this down because it's not just one, Mace. I think it's both playing off of each other.
Well, the thing is, they're 2 jigsaw puzzle pieces. And, each piece, of course, has kind of the indentures. And if they go together, they can snap into place, right? And one fills the other's gaps. And I think with Bonito and Jonathan Cooper, you have 2 players that have different skill sets, but they mesh well. And it's interesting to talk about this in light of the fact that Bonito started in place of Randy Gregory yesterday, and Randy Gregory did play. So, people are making a big deal. Oh, he was standing there on the sideline and he didn't have his helmet. He went in on the second series. They were rotating by series, okay?
You want to make a big deal about something, look at Chase Claypool with the Bears. Chase Claypool was inactive, and now he's on the trade block. The Randy Gregory thing was way overblown.
Yeah, they're telling Chase Claypool stay away from the facility, basically. You're gone, right? I mean, that's something that matters. If a guy is on the sideline without his helmet and then he goes in on the second series, well, then they're just rotating him based on possessions. Okay. So yeah, that's not a big deal, but is there significance to shifting the rotation around to where Benito is first up and getting more snaps? Yes, there absolutely is significance there. And now you've got Baron Browning entering the picture perhaps as soon as this week, coming off the PUP list. And you're going to have Frank Clark re-entering the picture more likely by the Chiefs game next week. Certainly that's the goal that he's set after the abductor muscle injury. So, the dynamic is shifting a bit at edge, and so you're going to have reinforcements there, but you might be seeing the top of the depth chart as we saw yesterday. That's something that may end up lingering, that your starters are Cooper and Benito. I thought it was significant that Sean Payton gave them both game balls for the performance yesterday as well.
Right. I thought it was great to see Nick Benito still struggling to set the edge, but that's not what you're asking him to do in that situation. And Cooper is a growing and budding player. Like, there's more there with those two. And it's really the concert that they work together in. And we can talk about edge combinations. I'll think back to Clark Hagen's and Joey Porter. It goes even before that, but like edge combinations in this league, it's about what one can do that the other can't do, and they feed off each other. You mentioned puzzle pieces, and I think those are two puzzle pieces that work together fantastically for this team.
Right. I mean, if you can just get Nick Benito a little better at setting the edge, then I think you're going to be golden. The thing that both of them did that I loved yesterday was how they contained Justin Fields for the most part in the game, right? Like when you saw busts of containment, generally speaking, those weren't on Benito or Jonathan Cooper. That was interesting. There was one play where Randy Gregory basically kind of, overshot and then didn't contain, and then Justin Fields took off and made a play. The thing you'll say for Nick Benito, I think you may have mentioned it, he's making his mistakes at full speed. That's another thing too. Like if you're going at full speed, then that's going to make up for a multitude of sins. And right now, the question you have to ask yourself is Nick Benito still making some young mistakes? Is that worse than having Randy Gregory out there who's making some mistakes, even though he's a veteran? I think inevitably, if you have a tie on a lot of counts, you opt for the younger player with upside, right? That's generally speaking what you do, is you turn the page and see if the younger player can't go to another level. And I think there are some positions all over the roster seats where we may be having similar discussions about, okay, do you keep going down the path with this veteran who is what and who he is as a player, or do you get the younger guy out there, live with the mistakes, but start figuring out if that player can get better, improve, and grow and be more a year from now? As the season progresses, I think we're going to see some more of these things developing. We may even be seeing some of them developing at wide receiver.
Right. At wide receiver, where Marvin Mims, spectacular when he's out there, and he's not out there as much as he should be. And the Jerry Jeudy thing, like, he finally looked a little closer to full strength, Mace. And Sutton's doing his thing. It's not a number one thing. He's well paid. That's a conversation that we've had before, but I think it's time to play the kids. The kids are showing up, and we'll get to the Javonte thing a little bit later, but yeah, the kids on both sides, whether it's offense or defense. I think the young players getting them experience while also having, it's almost like the guarantee on the box in Tommy Boy.
Oh, yeah.
We got Randy Gregory. It makes you feel good at night. You can sleep well at night, because if you're having some Nick Benito struggles, yeah, plug in Randy Gregory. I think it's good for both sides, honestly. It's not what you planned, but it's what works.
So who's the guarantee fairy in this instance then?
It'd have to be either Vance Joseph or Sean Payton, right?
Oh, yeah, gosh. I think for your customer's sake, for your daughter's sake, you might consider buying brake pads from me.
Right. You might consider playing the young guys, because the young guys, I don't care if they don't have experience. This is the way you get them experience, and this is the way you learn, because I think against the Bears, especially being down the way they were, Mace, the way that game went, you learned about this team. Of course, Russell Wilson was going to stay positive, but who else was? Who else made plays? Benito, Cooper. These are guys that you can count on to not give up when the chips are down.
Right. And there was there was a lot of that yesterday, a lot of persistence, a lot of not giving up. I mean, we can have a conversation about De'Aaron Turner-Yell, for example, going in and playing a second straight game for Justin Simmons. And it wasn't great for Turner-Yell at times, but he makes two massive plays in the fourth quarter, right? He has a pass defense on that third down early in the fourth quarter to get the Broncos defense off the field at 28-14. There were so many plays in the comeback, but that's one I think you have to put there in the top in the top 3 or 4 as far as really kind of getting it going. And the fact, if you're going to make a rally from 3 scores down, you've got to get the offense back on the field quickly. And that's something that the Broncos defense has largely proven incapable of, but they managed to do it right then and there. And the other thing is, like, when you look at the totality of the defense, look, you can't rely on scoop and scores happening on a regular basis, right? You can't really rely on takeaways. Takeaways tend to they tend to come in bunches, and you can't say, okay, we're going to get 1 or 2 a game. It doesn't really work that way, right? But you can rely on stops. Now, the fourth quarter, you basically had 1 stop, 2 takeaways, and then a 4th down turnover on downs. But the Bears had marched to the 18-yard line, right? They were in the red zone with a chance to move the chains further. So I don't know the defense remedied everything in that fourth quarter, not really close to it. It's nice to know that they can make some big plays when they're in high leverage situations, but I don't know that the defense really fixed anything except to say, okay, on occasion we can dig down and make a big play when we need to.
Right. And you know this game, Mace, everything's in runs. And when everything's going Chicago's way, I'm thinking like, well, it won't the whole game. Like the Broncos aren't this bad. They're not this bad. We could make the argument they'd be 3-1 right now. And oh man, they lose to Miami, they get their asses kicked, whatever. It's Miami, or they're one of the best, whatever. But like, okay, everything's going Chicago's way. The ball, it's a funny shaped ball, it bounces differently, and not everything does at that time. So you don't rely on the scoop and score, but you have to be ready when momentum swings back your way, and the Broncos were.
Well, and also you have to be ready when you're going up against a team in an environment where people don't believe that the home team's going to win.
You felt it when you were there, man. You could feel it. Watching TV, you could feel it when that crowd got out of it.
And you know what? You felt it against the Broncos in week 2 against Washington, right? That's how it's easy to recognize, because it was the same kind of discomfort that we saw when they played the Commanders, and it happened earlier in the game. Of course, it happened like toward the end of the second quarter, and then again, it was a quick stop that really got the ball rolling downhill, because they come out of halftime and the Broncos offense goes 3 and out. And that's when you can feel everything tightening up, and you hear the, oh craps, basically hitting around the stadium. And I think actually the first moment where you kind of felt that discomfort was when Turner-Yell made the play on 3rd down to get the Bears offense off the field. And at that moment, it's like, okay, there's the door has been pushed open a sliver. And that's when Russell Wilson, right after that, to start the next drive, as Mike McGlinchey said, went in the huddle and said, "Hey, guys, they're not feeling it. Like they're not going to be able to close this. We're going to do this here." It was very easy to sense, I thought, the Bears losing control in the game. And as I said to Rachel on coffee break this morning, I think there were moments even earlier in the game that cost the Bears the contest, like at the end of the first half, when all of a sudden Luke Getsy went curiously conservative in his play calling, and the Bears were taking their time coming out of the huddle inside of 2 minutes. I mean, I was watching that. I'm like, what the heck are you guys doing? I mean, you have the Broncos on the run at this point. They haven't had a chance to do to go in the locker room and retrench and readjust. Keep them on the run. Like it was baffling to me, but and that's another thing. The Bears don't know how to win. I think that was evident yesterday. And that's why you do have to step back and take everything with a grain of salt. This is a bad football team that has lost 14 games in a row. And not only that, its previous 6 games, none of them were close. All right. So this is the only game that the Bears have played that's been a 1-score game since before Christmas of last year, right? And you could have easily lost to this team, this lousy team. So I think what we know is the Broncos, they're not the worst team. I think they're probably on balance going to end up as a lower mid-tier team. 6, 7 wins when all is said and done. Maybe if things go askew, 4 or 5, but I think you have to account for players that are coming back. So I don't think this Broncos team is suddenly going anywhere, but I think you're starting to find some avenues worth exploring in terms of developing for the long term, like some of the players we've mentioned on this show.
Avenues worth exploring, and then also problems that honestly, Mace, I didn't expect. Now, everything's not going to be smooth, okay? So I want to preface that. I wasn't expecting perfection, but the amount of penalties this team has, that's a startling. And special teams wasn't perfect yesterday either. We'll save that for later. But you talked to Mike McGlinchey after the game, and, he was commenting on that. Always a good quote, always someone good to talk to. But I think everyone except Ben Powers, your hands are clean. Everyone else, you had a problem yesterday.
Yeah, and Mike McGlinchey had 2 of them. So he had 5 false start penalties on the Broncos starting offensive line, and everyone but Powers got called for at least 1, and McGlinchey got called for 2, and he got called for false start penalties a couple of times earlier in the season as well. I mean, this is something that's going to be remedied now. Sean Payton pointed to some things, including the cadence and trying to get things smooth pre-snap. But McGlinchey is one of those dudes who's going to take ownership for it, and he kind of did that as we roll that beautiful bean footage from the locker room.
I think we understood the position that we put ourselves in was because of a lot of self-inflicted wounds. Offensively, the penalties and the operation have to be better, myself included. We stall drives, we kill drives, we don't give ourselves opportunities to move the football because of, not locking into what we need to do in the full. You can't take anything for granted in the whole operation, whether it's play call, getting in and out of the huddle, communications with the cadence, anything that it is, we have to be better. And, I'm just thankful that we were able to overcome it and put some points on the board in the second half.
Yeah, and McGlinchey's your guy, everyone. I don't want to hear anyone talk about benching McGlinchey or whatever. And it's not just because he's a good interview, but because that's your best right tackle. Your best right tackle option is Mike McGlinchey. So they'll figure it out. And with veterans, you can have some solace that will get taken care of. These aren't young players. They're veteran players making mistakes that they know how to clean up.
Right. And I think that's the key thing with him. And one of the reasons you like having him as a leader in that locker room is because of the accountability that he takes. And he's going to start with himself first. I mean, he's not going to sit there and point fingers at everyone else. He is, he's not one of those rules for me and rules for thee and not for me people, right? He's starting with himself, starting right there. And that's what you like. You can really respect that about him. I think the funny thing is he even mentioned when he was talking about things, the cadence as well. So that's Sean Payton talking about, that's Mike McGlinchey talking about it. So that actually does put a little bit of this on Russell Wilson, right? But
just a little bit. Yep.
Here's the thing. You looked yesterday and you saw 4 different offensive linemen committing false start penalties, right? So when it's not happening to one player, but it's happening to a bunch of players, that's when you start saying, okay, this may not be an individual player. This may, at least on the offensive line, the players being called for it. This may be something else. What's the common thread here? Well, every play has got the QB with a cadence, right? So
how's
there
the
you go.
center get a false start? Like that should point the finger at Russell Wilson just at least a little bit. Like the center got a false start.
And that typically is it. When you see the center get called for a false start, which is admittedly rare, but when you do, that's usually on the quarterback, not on the center. And so, there's that's why, hey, is Russell Wilson doing a lot of good things? Yeah. I mean, I put it out there on social media last night, 9 touchdown passes through 4 games, which is what he had through 4 games in 2021. And then last year, he didn't get touchdown to number 9 until week number 14, right? So what does that tell you about, what changed? Like, what was the difference there? Well, it's the guy who's coming in with the New York Jets offense next week, and we have plenty of time to get into that. But Russell Wilson's doing a lot right, but it's still not perfect, and the pre-snap procedure, like Sean Payton was saying today, it's not all the way there. He talked about 2 weeks ago, and he said, look, there's still some work to do. By the way, I don't know, did you listen to Sean Payton's conference call today?
Yes, it's a very abbreviated conference call, as it always is.
Well, no, sometimes he's really expansive. Like
sometimes he talks about injuries when he says, I'm not talking about injuries.
I thought he was actually really expansive last Monday, and today he was a little bit shorter. And he kind of alluded to this with Bill Parcells, that sometimes Big Tuna, after a loss, was really, expansive and in a good mood, but sometimes after a win, he wasn't in a great mood, right? And some of that is, I think, kind of trying to push. I think Sean Payton is trying to make sure that his players see that game for what it really is, which is, hey, you won, that's great, but there was a lot that still needs to be cleaned up. I mean, this doesn't make the Broncos all of a sudden a contender, right?
No.
There's still a crap ton of stuff to fix on this team, especially on the defensive side, but even on the offensive side. I mean, you know what? Maybe it'll change when Greg Dulcich gets back out there and gets healthy, but you're still not seeing anywhere near what you need to see from the tight end position.
Yeah, you're seeing pretty much nothing. And Manhurts had his one catch, and then he almost fumbled it at the end. It's like, Chris, hold on to it. Hold on to it. We like you. And Adkins is fine. Like, none of these guys are the weapons that Dulcich is.
Yeah.
Leads me back to the Albert O thing. We'll leave that one alone, Mace. But let's talk about Jaleel McLaughlin, because the Javonte Williams hip injury, a hip flexor, could knock him out for a couple of weeks. We're waiting to see and learn more about this injury, but just knowing the nature of that injury, he might not be back until week 7.
And remember, part of the timeline here as well is that you turn around and play next Thursday night. So here we are going into the stretch of the season where you're going to have 2 games in 5 days, starting with the Jets game on Sunday and on to Kansas City on Thursday. So the compressed timeline is something that may work against Javonte getting all the way back by that Chiefs game. And here's another interesting thing. If you need another running back, you're probably going to have to move Dwayne Washington up to the 53, because yesterday you used the last practice squad activation that he had. So if you need that third running back and you want it to be the special teams presence that Dwayne Washington has become, you're going to have to make room on the 53. You've got players coming back from injured reserve this week. I'm fascinated to see what some of the roster moves are here in the next couple of days. I think there's going to be some shuffling going on.
Yeah, some shuffling going on, some guys coming back from injury, and perhaps more Jaleel McLaughlin. We've been saying it since May. I always give full credit to Matt Waldman. Matt Waldman was talking about Jaleel McLaughlin in January. So if there's any Marco Polo on this guy, it's him. But you and I, in covering this team, saw it from day one, giving you the hints. You've seen it. You've seen a little bit more of it. He still needs to work on pass pro. That's what I asked him about a couple of weeks ago. Like, that still needs to be an issue. Sean Payton talking about it last night. Like, we don't want him to be in a mismatch against a larger linebacker. So, yes, it will still be Samaje Perine, Jaleel McLaughlin, but more McLaughlin at 10 yards a clip. It's not a bad thing.
Yeah, and effective in the passing game as well. And what you're just hoping to get out of him in pass protection is be enough of an obstruction, right? Just, I'm going to quote Star Wars here. Just hold him off for a few seconds. As Red Leader said.
Red Leader? Yeah.
Red Leader, yes.
Negative. Yeah, just impacted the surface.
Like I said, for years I thought I said, negative, just pecking on the surface. Like, that's why I think I thought he was from, sound like, why is Red Leader from Georgia? He's got had this deep South expression, although I think the actor who portrayed Red Leader was Canadian, if I'm not mistaken. But hey, you know what? Okay. I mean, actors and actresses, they can do accents, that's part of the game. But yeah, just not even a few seconds. It can be just be an obstruction for a second and a half. That's really all you're asking in terms of a 85-pound player picking up a blitz, right? Look, he's not going to be Samaje Perine. He's not going to be, he's not going to be Javonte Williams. Melvin Gordon, I know people don't want to hear that name around here, unfortunately, because he's a good dude. But Melvin Gordon, excellent in pass pro. But they're different body types. They've got they're larger backs than Jaleel McLaughlin. But just can you be an obstruction, and be willing to do it. And certainly Jaleel McLaughlin has the willingness to do it. You just got to get him to a little bit of a higher level, because if you can, then all of a sudden he does become an every down threat. Although at his size, I do think you have to watch the reps and watch how much he's going between the tackles. You don't want to wear him out. Because as it is, one thing that I think caused Jaleel McLaughlin to go undrafted was the tread on the tires, because of how many touches he did accumulate, at the College of Notre Dame and then on at Youngstown State.
5 seasons. How do you get almost 9,000 yards rushing? 5 seasons.
Yeah.
And he's damn good. He's damn productive wherever he goes, but tread on the tire, might be wearing a little bit thin, smaller back, and use him in combination. There's things that Samaje can do better. They trust him more towards pay dirt in the red zone. That's fine. But Jaleel McLaughlin, I wouldn't mind if he started, Mace, and gets like 12 carries a game, 3-4 catches, let's say 15 touches total for Jaleel McLaughlin. I think that's a good number to get that explosive part, because you see him on the film, and you'll see the hole and like, oh, that's a 4-yard run. Well, for him, it's a 7-yard run or a 10-yard run. Like, you'll see the play develop on the coach's tape, and it's like, this is what it's going to be. But with Jaleel, it can be more because he gets there faster.
Yeah, he gets there faster, but he's also learning patience, right, Tits? Because sometimes you have to wait for the hole to develop before you hit it, and instead of just charging in. And I think we're seeing him kind of just hesitate a bit and know and trust that it's going to be there. And he's always going to have that quickness and burst to get to the hole when it flashes open. But sometimes you just have to hold off a beat so you don't run into the rear end of some offensive lineman. So that's part of his growth here. But just, this isn't, he's had a couple of impressive games already this season, although that first game that was impressive for him back in week 2, they didn't use him all that much. But I mean, that's another thing. Also, you kind of have to look here and say, all right, who's scoring, who's making plays despite lower snap counts? Marvin Mims Jr. is making plays. Jaleel McLaughlin's making plays. Brandon Johnson is making plays, right? And when we talk about saying, hey, let's play the kids, you're playing the guys that are actually doing some good things out there. So I actually do wonder, Cecil, even after Greg Dulcich gets back, if we maybe start looking at more things that involve a fullback and fewer 2 tight end sets. Because I think that actually works a little bit better for Jaleel McLaughlin, is having Michael Burton there in the backfield with him, another person who can handle blitz pickup, rather than going with a lot of 2 tight end sets and one and single back sets. If maybe the way to go is 1 tight end and then an I formation with Burton and McLaughlin.
Yeah, and get the explosive players on the field. We'll see if they do just that. Mace, how you feeling on this Monday, man? How you feeling? What's your pulse check, temperature check?
Like, just for the Broncos or just me personally?
Oh, either one. So
okay,
it's our show, baby. We can talk about whatever we want.
I'm doing well. I'm in a good place.
That's good.
I got back from Chicago late last night, and I got a very warm greeting from Ruby and Cooper, the two dogs here. I
haven't heard them yet today.
Well, you can hear a dog down. I have a
them.
window. Yeah, yep. You hear them because there's a dog barking down the street. I have the window open because it's a beautiful day. It's a beautiful day out here right now. It's like 80 degrees. But yeah, so I'm hearing Ruby and Cooper bark because you have another dog is walking along the street, and so now you are getting the canine chorus and symphony.
There you go.
Enjoy it in the background.
The symphony. Well, on Sunday before the game, obviously, I ran my first 5K, and I couldn't help thinking about you, brother.
Oh,
Because I was watching people's calves, and I was like, no one has better calves than Andrew Mason.
oh
So I was
gosh.
like, you could do a 5K, man, because I did it, and I'm not a runner, and I ran all the 3.1 miles.
See, I'm not a runner, but I'm as the chorus hits another level here. I'm not a runner. I'm definitely a fast walker and a hiker, so I'm not sure I'm inclined to run. I honestly feel like I hit a better headspace by walking and being at that pace, but definitely brisk walking though. If they don't mind me speed walking that baby, I think I would do it.
You're right. Yeah, no, it's all good. It's all good.
Yeah.
Jogging with the soft J. He's
Jogging.
Andrew Mason.
Apparently, you just run. Sorry. I'm Ron Burgundy.
There we go. San Diego. He's Andrew Mason. You follow him on social at Mace Denver. I'm at Cecil Lammey. We are orange and blue today. Do all the YouTube things: like, comment, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell so that you never miss a vid. Because OBT is a BFD, and we certainly appreciate you. Until next time, be safe, be kind, know that you are appreciated. Stay tuned, and would you please stay frosty,